Welcome back. We have an exciting hour. Tom Cavello is going to join us. Stephen McDonald is going to join us here in a little while. But before we get into the real estate portion of this, Ryan Leopold is still here. And Ryan, let's just continue that conversation we had at the end of last hour, just about that setting expectations with clients, because it's so important now. And people don't want to hear sometimes the reality of what's going on in the mortgage arena, in real estate, in the financial planning arena, as we talked about before.
Yeah, and I think personally, on it for the last 2 weeks has changed. I don't know about you guys, seeing purchases go up. With the HARP refinance program coming up, lenders are swamped with new business, and they're still staffed from 3-4 weeks ago. So I think it's setting a different expectation up. That I met with a couple buyers this week. One, they were kind of like, well, we don't know if we're getting a gift for a down payment yet. We didn't know if we're going to borrow from the 401k for the down payment. We're just they're still figuring it out, but they're already under contract closing the end of April. So I'm like, no. We have to figure it out today to assure that we have a smooth and uneventful transaction, because that's the worst thing, is dealing with rushes on purchases. It's just not fun. And with this increase in purchase activity, I think that I'm sure Tom and Steve will give a much better perspective that I'm sure sellers are not they've got a little bit more leverage these days. So buyers need to be aware. They need to be organized and be structured. And it's our job to set that perspective up and set that expectation up.
The interesting fact, too, is, and we even hit on this, when there's a line for underwriting on these things, they're just sitting in a file, moving slowly towards the line. And they don't really, most banks, a lot of people, they don't care if it's a refinance or a purchase. It's just in line. And so, helping people understand, look, this is not, it is a 30-day minimum close now. Setting that expectation from the beginning and really letting people know things that they don't want to hear. You need to make a decision now. It can feel forceful, I think, but that's what it takes.
It's just, I've really had to take a different approach lately, just being really open and honest and straightforward, not only with our clients, but with our partners, and thinking that, okay, it's okay to get me a purchase and sales contract, 5 to 7 days after they make the initial offer, while we wait for the inspection, where, we're trying to get organized and structured and get these buyers through the process to create that great experience. And we can see every single day when we look at rate sheets for different lenders that their turn times are going up. You start to see, a month ago you sent 2 or 3 days in underwriting, then it went from 3 to 5 days in underwriting. Now we're looking at 8 to 10 days in underwriting for some lenders, 5 to 7 days for conditions. And so I think it's our job on the lending side as professionals to get that stuff up front and get everything we need at the very beginning to assure that things go smooth and uneventfully for the sake of the client. Because that, when you have docs at escrow 5 to 10 days before closing on a deal, it makes it so much easier and so much less stressful that it really, if we can set that up every single time, it's going to help everybody involved. It really is.
What do you do? So let's say somebody's out there, they're looking to buy a house. And, they're kind of used to, okay, I got time, I'm going to pick my lender. What do you tell them as far as, this is what you need to do now if you want to close then? How do you bridge that gap between somebody who thinks they know how this works because they've done it before, or they did it a year ago or 2 years ago, and what's really transpiring right now?
Well, it's so interesting, and I think, and we talked about it in the roundtable in the last couple minutes, is just not being scarce in our thinking. Is that in the traditional sense, most lenders are going to tell everyone what they want to hear as opposed to being straightforward and honest. And when it comes to turn times these days, we had a client who actually just got into contract. They're looking to do a first at the conforming loan rate and then do a second at one. Basically, there's not very many lenders who do second mortgages these days. So they want to do a second over here at this bank. That bank, for doing a second mortgage, is 35 to 40 days. Okay? And this bank over here is 7 to 10 days. And the rate is basically about the same, and the strategy is basically about the same, but the client is like, no, I want option A. I'm like, okay, that's fine, we'll do option A, but I need an extension for 10 days now, not 10 days before close. And they're like, oh, wait a second, well, why? And so we went through this and just being honest and saying, look, this is what we deal with when you start pulling in different scenarios like second mortgages and brokering and stuff like that, is they just have to understand the expectation of, this is what it takes to get things done in today's market. And we're doing the best we can for them. But that's, again, setting that expectation up front.
It's a little bit of the, what was the movie? Help me, Jerry Maguire. Help me, help you. You want to get this done. You want this house. Just Give me the pay stub. Ryan, we're here with Ryan Leopold of Cobalt Mortgage. Ryan, when when the refinances, as we've seen them go up drastically, and with rates where they were, and rates are up a little bit. We're not down in the, those high threes as easily anymore. But now it's kind of that backlog trying to get through. And the problem that maybe a lot of people don't understand when they're trying to, why isn't my loan done? What's taking so long? I think the biggest problem is a lot of people don't think of, well, gosh, if I went for the lowest interest rate out there, guess what? That's where all the other people went too. So that's going to be the longest line. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people, I don't think people should understand that because they're not in that business. But the lowest rates have the most people going to get them. But sometimes you have to take a slightly higher interest rate to get something done in a manageable time frame. I mean, is that kind of how you see it?
It is. And again, everything's about setting the right expectations. So we had a client a month and a half ago who came in, set him up perfectly, and he said, well, I'm getting quoted this rate from a discount broker. And I said, well, okay, sat him down. I explained to him, this is what happens when you work with a mortgage banker like we do at Cobalt. We have 100% control from underwriting to funding to processing. Here's our turn times. Here's how we view a file. This is how there's only like 7 to 10 brokered lenders out there, and you can see their pricing, that it's cheaper to go the brokered route. But look at their turn times, and this is how much control we used. So that it was funny, as I had them pre-approved, the minute it got under contract, I called the buyer's agent and the listing agent and said, hey, I'm the lender on the deal. We're excited to work with you. It's going to be a smooth and uneventful transaction. Heck, if people want to close early, we're more than willing because docs will probably be there 2 weeks early. That night, the client came back and said, well, we really want to go. It's an eighth lower in rate. It's like $2,000. And I said, oh, my goodness. So I let them know this is what happens if you go in this direction. And this is what happens if you go in this direction, and let them make the choice. We lose a lot of control. The client said it's worth it. So I immediately called both agents up and said, look, we'll be lucky if we close on time. We're going to do the best we can, but prepare that we're going to be to the last very second to get docs out because we have zero control once we turn a file into them. And of course, the client got annoyed. The client was frustrated. It wasn't a smooth, fun process. It was a stressful process. It closed, and it closed on time, but it was stressful and not fun for everybody, as opposed to what it could be by just being smarter. So the client just needs to make their choice every day. And
yeah, well,
about rate and fees, or it's about a good experience.
You bring up a great point too, and I'll be interested to get Tom and Steven's opinion on this. But of course, people want the lowest rate, but you got to get in line for it. I mean, it's like anything. It's like going to IKEA on the weekends. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a really long line, and you might not make it to lunch that you're supposed to get to, right? Yeah. I mean, things transpire you're trying to have happen outside of life. Whereas if you go to Nordstrom's, you're probably going to get in and out. You're going to get a nice bag. They'll probably carry whatever you want out to your car. Mm-hmm. Life is good. And so, but people, I mean, I think in the mortgage world or in even finance, or people don't really understand what the difference in choice really means. Mm. And, I think if when people are out there listening and they're thinking about refinances or purchases, that's really kind of what it comes down to, right? They need to understand what those choices mean between the lowest rate or the good experience.
Well, it's interesting. We talked about having this client come on the radio show as well and basically say, this is the options that were presented to me. This is the direction that I chose, and this is the experience that I had. And if I would have gone back and could have done it differently, you know what? It's just not worth it. It's not worth the headache and the stress about buying a $500,000 house and, have a better system and a better process for it. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Well, you can save the $1,000 maybe by going to the cheaper place. But the reality of it is how much stress is your wife going to cause when you can't get the moving trucks there on time after she put in all that work trying to pack it up, right?
And I'm telling you now, seems to me becoming a lot more of a seller's market with low inventory and good property selling, is that if it doesn't close in 30 days, there's a higher likelihood that it maybe even than it was from a year ago, that seller may just go, you know what? We've got plenty of buyers around the corner. You can't close on time. Maybe they won't grant that exception. So I think, at least from my perspective on the lending side, it seems like things are changing a little bit. And, buyers just need to be prepared that they need to be more organized and more structured and just have more control over the process.
Well, Ryan, we have to go to break. When we come back, Tom Cavello is going to join us. We're going to get his opinion a little bit on this situation before we really go into what's going on in the new construction world. My name is Ben Brashen. That's Ryan Leopold. We'll be right back after this break.